Hey, it's Dr. J, and guess what? It's Sales and Business Tips Wednesday. Now, as I always search the globe and Australia to find the best people, and I had the delight of meeting up with Robert Briffa just the other day. And Robert Briffa is the one of the senior people at a company called Synergy People. They specialize in workforce optimization and new age recruitment. Now, with everything changing out there in the marketplace, people having, let's say, stand down, people having to rehire in a not too distant future, I thought it was a real great opportunity to talk to an expert in this area. And I was absolutely delighted to hear of some of the new age models that was the company of Synergy People have been using. And it's quite revolutionary. I haven't seen it before. And he was telling me about some of the results they've been getting. It's been outstanding. So with no further ado, welcome, Robert. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. It's my pleasure.
Look, mate, tell us a little bit about Robert, the man, and how you got involved with recruitment and workplace optimization.
Sure. I have had a career in the chemical industry, a long sales and sales management career. And my wife actually started a recruitment company some 16 years ago now. And after about 3 years, the company was growing at a rapid rate and needed some management expertise. And I saw the chemical industry in Australia on the decline. So we thought the best thing to do was for me to join the family business, which is not really a family business anymore. It's grown much larger, or it's outgrown the family. So that's how I landed in recruitment. And
well, that's a good way of actually doing it, getting involved with a small business, but now it's grown. And, you know, we're as good as our people, aren't we, when it comes down to the business? You can have the best product and service in the world, but if the people aren't servicing it, if it's a good product, or we can't sell it, or we can't, making sure people feel important, everything comes unstuck. And in these times of change, I think that we're going to be, in some cases, going back to the drawing board. So from your perspective, given that you've been doing this for quite some time, how's recruitment changed?
Yeah, the recruitment is, it has changed from a sourcing perspective. We use social media now and more than 16 years ago. Social media didn't really even exist. So technology has changed the sourcing part of recruitment, but recruitment is still fundamentally the same. A person needs to contact another person to convince them that this is the job for them. But the part of recruitment which I think is going to change dramatically is the selection of people. That's where the big change will come.
And if we're talking about selection, this is a big challenge, because a lot of people, you know, they'll get a resume on Seek or Indeed or whatever the case may be. They talk to the person and they seem like they're pretty good, and check a few references and so forth. But it's all hit and miss, isn't it? They can be actually terrific for a little while, or and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it becomes uncomfortable and it doesn't work out. So we're talking to small to medium-sized businesses now, and also to people that are wanting a job. What should they do? Is it better just to put your details on LinkedIn and Indeed and just hope and wish, or is it better to get people screened beforehand? Does that save a lot of pain?
Of course. As you were saying, most people would just do an interview, maybe a reference check, trust their gut feel, and take it from there. But we have we've been using behavioural interviewing techniques for a long time, and that helps a lot in selecting the right person to fit the job traits that are required. But there's a lot more technology now that we can use, and actually our company does use for ourselves and our clients to much better ensure that the right person is selected for the job that we're hiring them for.
Okay, well, we call that a blue sky conversation, which is like hoping that that's going to be okay. But when it comes down to the now and historical things and so forth, what I found that most times, more often than not, people will hire two, for instance, salespeople. They know one will be okay and one will more than likely fail. Now, hopefully they're all successful because we want people to succeed. But why do people fail? Let's say it's an employee. Why do they fail when they go into a job that seems to be the right fit?
Sure, we find that the failure comes from a misalignment between individual behaviours and the job-specific traits that are required, and also a misalignment of interests to the motivators that the company provides. So that misalignment is why things fall apart.
So could you give me an example of, obviously not mentioning names, but give us an example of what happened when that was, and what were the misalignments, so people can sort of put it into a picture?
Yeah, sure. What we find quite a lot is that through behavioural interviewing, we might get to know we might be able to predict the behaviours of someone and then be able to say, well, yes, they line up with the traits that are required. But what is often missed is what interests that person. Are they an artistic person? And if they are we putting them into a creative position? And if we're taking a person that is interested in art, art and artistic endeavours, if we're putting them into a task-driven role, they're just not going to like it. They're not going to perform well. It's going to be a chore all the time, and that just breeds frustration on the employee and the employer. So that we find that those misalignments is what it just leads to frustration usually on both parties.
So when you say behaviour and you say values, what's the difference between behavior and values?
Well, the behavior is what the individual has, and a value is what the company or the job requires in terms of a trait. So usually they're the same thing, but a behavior is what the individual owns, and the value is what the company for example, for a particular position, and let's just say on a business development position.
So that's like a sales position. So that
a sales position,
because we're going to be talking lots of salespeople here. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I picked it. So if I'm the sales manager or the owner of the business and I am looking for the best salesperson, I would want someone that has the trait or the value of really good interpersonal skills. Someone that is not afraid to pick up the phone, not afraid to have a conversation with another person, and so someone that is quite has the behaviour of extroversion, open to experiences. Though that type of behaviour is what I would require. Yeah. So if someone is high in those behaviours, then that they're going to more than likely be successful in the type of sales that I do.
Okay, so if that's the case, what sort of tools and ways do you do that? So let's say, for instance, somebody comes to you, they need a gun salesperson. What tools are you using? Because you told me some really cool things that you're doing.
Sure. Well, what we do is that we profile the position. So we sit with our client and ask them about the behaviour traits that they believe that are pertinent for that position. And then we profile those traits against either a gun person, whoever's, we ask them, who should we clone within your organization? Or if there isn't anyone, we can sit down with them and go, and we've got a tool, an assessment that the client actually does to profile the position. So there's behavior traits that they pick out, then they do a survey, and through that survey, the avatar or profile of that position is created. But so the best way is to take someone that is very good in that position and get them to do this assessment and make them the benchmark, or we like to say make them the avatar for that position, and then assess the people that you're recruiting against that benchmark.
Okay, so let's put this into perspective then. So drivers, I mean, sales professionals, you want them driven to achieve budget and, do whatever it takes. They're not a 9-to-5 type of person. And then there's also their values. Obviously, they want to have integrity and all that sort of jazz. But then there's another thing that we talked about was the workplace activators or motivators. Now, those motivators are whether they're driven by money or whether they're driven by, let's say, education, or they're driven by having set processes. Now, if someone is driven by money, you can dangle a little bit of, let's say, extra commission, and they'll go for gold. They'll hit it like a barracuda on a yellowtail. But if they're not driven by money, and we keep dangling the money and say you can make more money, and you're not saying I'm going to give you education or I'm going to give you a lovely chair because they might be more aesthetic, they might take the money, but it's not going to motivate them. So how do you actually ascertain those types of let's say, traits or workplace motivators?
Yeah, well, again, in the assessment tools that we use, that we call them interests. So it's basically 6 different interests that we measure. And what we find is that most people aren't that interested in when it comes down to it. Money, is good, but it's not what's going to really keep them motivated all the time. So what we find is that that if someone is enterprising, entrepreneurial, then that needs to be fed. There has to be an element of that in the job. So they're the types of things that really keep someone engaged and motivated long term. Whereas we find the money is intermittent motivated.
So we had the situation where we had somebody that was needed to have a certain thing done, and the actual business didn't have that. They probably wouldn't marry those 2 people up. So it will reduce the failure rate, I suppose. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. We find, and there's been studies to back this up, that using assessments, and if you use a behaviour assessment, it increases your chances by about 15% on top of doing your interview and reference checks. You do a cognitive assessment basically to see if the person has the mental horsepower for the position that you're recruiting for. Again, increases the likelihood by another 15%. And if you do the interest part of the assessment as well, increases by another 15%. So we see, and like I said, it's been backed up by studies, that you can increase your likelihood of the right hire by 3 times if you do those assessments. And those assessments are not, are very simple to do as well.
So it's like 300% improvement in the probability of having success with the team member that joins your crew. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
So, got a little bit left field question here, given that sort of just came into my mind. Intrinsically motivated people that just do it from here, or extrinsically motivated people that need motivating from outside? Some people just need someone to, giddy up. And then there's the others that are quite intrinsic, that will follow a process, but they'll just get up there and do it. Can you ascertain that as well?
Oh, absolutely. Those behaviour traits we can measure someone's propensity to be self-motivated or their conscientiousness. That could be that's one of the traits in our toolkit that can be measured. Our assessments are customizable, so our client can tell us what is important to them or what's important to the position, and we customize the assessment to suit them. It's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's tailor-made to what you need.
Oh, even better, because all businesses are slightly different, aren't they? So,
absolutely, yeah, and we find, like, even though the core characteristics of a good salesperson is pretty similar from business to business. However, there'll be values that each company that'll differ between company to company, and also the types of sales, whether it's business to business or business to consumer. So that those traits can be customized, and so I might not be the perfect salesperson for business consumer, where you might be, but that we would have, we can assess that.
So a lot of our clients and our members of the SAC, and also our in-house we have clients that we do it all for them, where we go in and do training and we help them accordingly. One of the big rocks is that they always say to me, and nearly every single CEO or sales manager has said this, they want their sales professionals to have initiative. And sometimes when the person hasn't got initiative, it's quite frustrating, even though that they get given a plan, but they don't think outside the box. They come with a problem to the manager. They don't come with a solution and have a couple of, let's say, ideas. This is a big rock as far as that I hear. Does the assessment tool ascertain how much initiative someone could have?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the behavior traits, actually, that there's about 60 different behaviors that we choose from for the client. Normally, we would test up to about 12. Over that, it becomes too complicated to judge the report properly. But initiative is one of those traits. So yes.
Well, that's great, because it's something that's always hit and miss. We could say, "Hey, Bob, have you got some initiative?" And in the interview, they say, "Yes, I have."
Yeah,
sure. Give me some examples. They give you some great examples, but you can't just go back and ask the boss all with your reference checks about it, because it becomes too arduous. There's another thing that I've just popped up into my head that I thought I want to see if this tool, because this tool sounds terrific. The difference between EQ and IQ has a massive bearing on the success of a lot of sales professionals. In my experience of over close to 30 years in training people all around the world, IQ is great, but it's the ability to have the EQ, to have the little bit of a dragon's tail with a think on your feet and that sort of stuff, which is, look, some people say it can be learnt. Maybe, I don't know, but do you measure EQ as well as IQ?
Well, what we do is not measuring those things per se. In the cognitive part of our assessment, we're measuring reasoning. So general reasoning, reasoning with words, and reasoning with numbers. So it's not it's measuring how you assess things in the real world, so the IQ is sort of mixed with the EQ in that cognitive assessment, and with the EQ side of it, purely the EQ side of it, that is assessed through the behaviour predicting part of the assessment.
Oh, that's awesome. Look, in my world, just put it in my little bubble now, that component of EQ is quite important. Now, some statistics will tell us that the people with the highest IQ can learn most things, but their delivery, because they're quite logical, sometimes can be stilted, but they can certainly do it. But if they've got significant EQ and just an average IQ, they can be phenomenally successful in the sales arena as a professional.
Correct, and that's why we measure your reasoning ability rather than just ability. Because it's one thing to be, maybe a mathematical genius, but if you can't explain that to your customer, or primarily your customer or your colleagues, of why we should do a certain thing in our business, or why the numbers work in a certain way for a client, then it doesn't matter how smart you are with words or numbers. It's about your ability to take those numbers and words and be able to articulate it and reason with another to be successful, I think, in sales.
Terrific. What are these tools called?
Our tools are called JobFit. So we have a range of tools, but the main products of the behaviour, cognitive and interest assessments, and the name for that is JobFit.
JobFit.
Yes, JobFit assessments.
Terrific. Well, it's really great to hear this, because there's so much hit and miss, especially in sales, because when we get a sales professional starting the job, they've got to go through firstly a proper induction. They've got to learn their skills. Whatever they bring with them, that's great, but usually we've got to start from ground zero. So they've got to be able to learn, but also have the enthusiasm to drive and then fit into the cogs to maximize return, because ultimately that person's a profit center. So I know it sounds pretty cut and dried, but that's a fact. If they're not performing as far as their KPIs and creating the revenues, then everything suffers. So one of the things I'd like to ask you is, we just go into normal everyday work. Given the circumstances we are in now, we've got a lot of people being taken out of the workplace, and they're now being asked to work from home. Mm-hmm. Now, initially, a lot of people were saying, oh my goodness, this is being pretty tough. Now, the neural pathways now being created to saying, well, I quite like working from home. However, there are some people that are highly effective at working at home. But from my experience, from what I'm hearing, people are enjoying it, but the output is not as good because the accountability is not as high. Is it going to be possible to measure, when we hire someone that might have to work from home, whether they would be successful in that environment? In other words, can they work autonomously, or do they need to be in a working environment where they have people around and so forth? Because I think this is going to be a challenge in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. There are behaviours that may not necessarily be applicable when working in an office and working with other teammates in the next cubicle or just down the hall. So they're traits such as resilience, discipline, responsibility, stability, conscientiousness, and engagement. Now, some of those are be normal. You want to make sure that the person has those in whether they're working at home, working in the office, traveling salesperson, whatever they may be. However, these type of traits are extremely important when working on your own, we've got an assessment that profiles these for the perfect working from home situation, and so they are at different levels.
You talked about a few moments ago. So if you could just repeat those traits that are really important for working from home or having that autonomy. Could you just say those again? So
sure.
Write this down, guys. Get your pen out and write this down.
Well, the things that our psychologists have selected are conscientiousness, stability, openness to experience, resilience, discipline, responsibility, and engagement.
And if they were low in those attributes, if they were low in those, does that say that they more than likely could possibly struggle in that type of environment?
Yes. We find, Steve, that you can struggle whether you're low or very high. So with all of these assessments, it would depend on what the manager thinks that would be the best outcome for each of those traits. Now we do that through a survey. So the manager gets to do an assessment, and then each of those traits are then rated between 1 to 10. It might come out that stability in his or her mind through the survey comes out to be a number 7. Equally, if someone does the assessment and comes out at number 3 as a 3 or a 10, you have got different issues to deal with. Now, the great things about these assessments is that you just don't get a number. Our platform has been put together by some pretty smart people, and you get a management report that tells you a person that scores a 3 in comparison to a 7 will have these type of this type of behaviour, and then it gives you a whole bunch of management tips on what to do with that person to ensure their well-being and performance.
So can somebody, if they want to do their recruitment on their own, for instance, can they buy these tools from you and just do it themselves, or is it you use these tools to pick the right person to then introduce 1 or 2 people that fit almost perfectly?
It can be done either way. We do use these tools throughout our recruitment process for our clients that choose the full package service. And actually, we incentivize them to do so because we know that it will give them the best result. But if someone wants to source their own candidates and run them through the assessment, we had one only a few weeks ago. A company in Melbourne found their own technical manager and contacted us and said, "Look, we just want to be sure. So can we please do the profile? And then we'll put this person through the assessment to see if our gut feel is right." Luckily for them, yes, it was right, and they hired the person. So yes, it can be as a standalone.
Well, that's awesome, because that allows us to be able to be autonomous to do our own thing, but also it might save them a little bit of time and money. Maybe they might spend a little bit more, but if they got someone to be able to read all the reports properly, sometimes you save on doing the report yourself. But if you're not able to really ascertain the info from that, they could maybe make a mistake. But on the other side of the equation, if the budget is low, because those reports were not expensive, and from what you told me, and my goodness, a phenomenal value. But your recruitment business actually does all that for them, and then they supply the right fit. So really, when they get 1 or 2 people, there's really just a simple interview to see if there's a fit, let's say, with personality, I suppose.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, these tools, we say, don't use them in isolation. They should be used in conjunction with our traditional interview and reference checking. And so, it's more of putting the science behind your gut feel, sorting out between 2 candidates that you think phenomenal from the interview. This will confirm whether they are really phenomenal. And it might split the candidates, one that fits the traits that you have set, one maybe doesn't. So they're real, they're tools, and they're not they're not to be used, like I said, in isolation. You could if you wanted to, but we believe that you should use them in conjunction with meeting the person, because you're going to spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah, of course. All right. Now, just going to come back to something you spoke about before, because I'm sure everyone's wanting to know. I think you said it earlier, but I want to just come back to it. If you've got a gun in your business, and this is Mary is absolute phenomenal. She's committed. She does whatever it takes. She learns quickly. She implements. She's loves change and loves training. Loves to doing her role plays, all the things that great sales professionals do. We say we want another Mary, but we wanted maybe a John. It doesn't matter if it's a male or female, but we just someone with those traits. So I'm just going to recap what you said and make sure I've got it right. So what you would do is that you would say, let's do a profile on Mary, and making sure that we find out all of the attributes and traits and behaviors that she has and values. So we find out, we profile Mary, and then we then profile the business to make sure that it has the values and stuff that you're going to give that person. Then those two things together would allow us to then have let's say a formula for the gun. And then you then go to market. They complete a form to see if it marries up with those traits and those values, which means it reduces the risk factor to getting another Mary or another John. Did I get that right?
Almost. Almost. In the first instance, what we do is sit down with the client and say to them, yes, have you got a gun in this position? Yes, we do. Okay. What makes that person a gun? And they will say, maybe if it's a salesperson, they may maybe things like, she uses initiative all the time. She's fantastic with reasoning with the clients. She's tenacious, resilient. So people will use these type of adjectives and verbs to describe why Mary is so fantastic. So we gather all that information. We turn that in. We turn that into the behaviour traits, which we call dimensions, and then we get the client to do a profile survey, and we'll get Mary to do the assessment based on those traits that they've spoken about Mary being so good at. And we can then use Mary's assessment of how well she has scored in each of those traits, or we can use a blend of what Mary's results in what the job profile says. But the most powerful one, if you've got a gun, you use their assessment results to form the profile of that position. And everyone is probably now familiar with the term avatar. The marketing community uses it ad nauseum. And you're really creating the salesperson avatar or the administration person avatar for your business. And we have one customer in particular that's been doing this for quite some time, and our success rate with them is phenomenal, and their business success is just fantastic. They have very, very few people that leave the business, and the people they select, they're engaged from minute one, and highly motivated because they're in the right job in the right company.
So I'm going to ask you here, did they use the tool on their own, or did they utilize your services to make sure they took out all the legwork?
They used us for the whole service.
Terrific. So look, I'm absolutely fascinated with making sure we take the risk component away. Obviously, from a selfish point of view, we want all of our companies and our sales professionals to be positioned in the right position for success. And I think when we actually can take away the guesswork, it allows us to then focus on training, implementation, and then utilizing those skills to maximize return, because we want everyone to have success and freedom to have those lifestyle choices, so instead of actually worrying about performance. So how can people get in contact with you, Robert, and be able to have a chat with you about making sure that they've got the right people? Because I'm sure that they'd like to have a bit of a chat with you at some stage.
Yeah, that'd be great. I suppose the easiest way, Steve, is just to drop me an email at robertb@synergypeople.com.au.
I'm just going to slow down here, just say it nice.
Sorry.
They've got their pens out, mate. They'll be writing this down.
So it's Robert B for Bob, at synergypeople.com.au, or visit our website, which is synergypeople.com.au.
Oh, terrific! So I'll put that in the notes as well. And I'm assuming that what we've just spoken about is optimization, and that then dovetails into the recruitment when you do it for them, or the tools that you get made available for you to use or people to use. That's making sure we're utilizing that optimization and
Absolutely. The optimization part is optimizing the right people for your business to start with. And also the tools that we provide you from the assessments are interview reports, so you can ask the right questions of that person. And more importantly, a management report is derived from this assessment that gives the manager and the employee a whole heap of information on how that person likes to be managed, how you're going to get the best out of that person in accordance to their traits, their cognitive ability, and their interests. So it's the full life cycle of that employee, and hopefully it is a full cycle and not a short one. These tools will ensure that that everyone is performing at their peak the whole time that they're employed by that company.
Well, given you just said that, I was going to wrap it up. I'm just going to grab one more little nugget from you. If we had a really great person, great for team morale, been around a long time, has history at the business, but maybe jaded, stale, in a position, let's say in sales or marketing or whatever it may be, but they still are, they're really fitted into the culture and so forth. Could the optimization, could you do an optimization report to see if they could maybe dovetail into a different part of the business and it would be a fit instead of losing that person?
Oh, absolutely. And this is where the job fit assessments really come into their own. That if they are a valued employee and like you said, are either getting stale, or if they just don't suit that position anymore because the position has changed, then we would look at, okay, if there is other positions within the company, let's profile those positions, or hopefully they already have been profiled, and let's get that person to do those assessments and see how they match to that. And if they match well, then there is a very high likelihood that they're going to be successful in that position. The other thing that it can be used for, Steve, is if you're considering someone for a promotion.
Yes.
Because the behaviour traits of a salesperson are a lot different from the behaviour traits required for a sales manager.
How many people have gone from great salesperson to a sales manager and failed and wish they'd stayed as a salesperson? And there's definitely a different beast, isn't it?
Absolutely. So what we have our clients do is profile the sales manager position and then assess their team to see who would actually be the best sales manager out of their team. And hopefully there is someone, but if there's not, then it tells them straight up front that no good to have that conversation, because maybe no one's going to be suited to it.
So it's also taking the risk out of that. Terrific.
Yes.
Well, Robert, absolute gold and some real big nuggets there, and I think it's fabulous how you have created these opportunities to utilize these tools to reduce the risk, but also give people a lot of success. And I'm sure that a lot of business owners will rest easy when they got the right people and then just focus on creating opportunities for everybody.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Steve. I appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure. Hey, gang, how good was that? Synergy People. Make sure you look up the website, reach out to Robert, and have a bit of a chin wag. He's got a wealth of knowledge. We could have talked for hours. People are our business. We have a business. bricks and mortar, we've got a brand, but people represent the brand. And in sales, you know that if you don't make any sales, we don't make any money, where we aren't able to maximize our return. So reach out to Synergy people, which are specialized in workforce optimization and new age recruitment. And I'm sure that Robert will give you a little bit extra help because you're from the SAC. So gang, write that stuff down. I'll put the things in there, take some action. And I know we're going to be having a fantastic rest of the year in the new normal. I'm Dr. J. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.